Karen was already pacing at the end of my driveway when the sheriff's cruiser pulled up, arms crossed, her voice loud enough to wake half the block. Finally, arrest her. She's refusing to comply with HOA regulations. She has to sign the membership papers or leave this community. My wife stood calmly on our porch, arms folded, not flinching. The sheriff stepped out, tipping his hat, eyes scanning the scene. "All right," he said slowly. "Who called this in?" Karen nearly leapt forward. "Me, HOA president. This woman has been living here for months without paying dues, without following bylaws, without permission. She's freeloading off our amenities and she's breaking the law." My wife's voice was steady, sharp enough to cut through Karen's rant. "Sheriff, this is our land, paid in full. We never signed up for her HOA. She shoved fake notices on our door and threatened to tow our truck and even told our kids they couldn't play on our own land." Karen's face twitched, panic flashing behind her fake confidence. "Orders from the county? I don't need the county," she snapped, her voice trembling. "I was elected president. That gives me authority." The sheriff flipped one of her papers around so the neighbors could see. It was nothing more than a Word document with clip art at the top and HOA violation notice typed in bold. People started laughing, phones recording every second. My wife finally stepped off the porch, her tone calm but firm. "Sheriff, this has been harassing us for weeks. She taped those on our door, threatened to tow our truck, and even told our kids they couldn't play on our own land." The sheriff's jaw tightened. He turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, issuing fake legal notices is a crime. It's called fraud. And if you keep threatening residents, you'll be facing harassment charges too." Karen's voice cracked into a screech. No, you don't understand. If you let them stay outside the HOA, others will refuse to join. The whole neighborhood will collapse. I have to enforce this." He leaned closer, his voice low but cutting like steel. "You don't enforce anything. You're not the law, you're not the county, and you sure as hell don't get to bully people out of their homes." Karen tried one last desperate move, pointing at my wife with a shaking finger. "She doesn't belong here. She's not one of us." The sheriff didn't even blink. He stepped back, rested his hand on his belt, and said the line that broke the crowd into cheers. "Lady, the only one who doesn't belong here is you." Karen's face went ghost white, but her mouth still wouldn't quit. "You can't talk to me like that. I'll call my lawyer. I'll have your badge taken away." The sheriff didn't flinch. "Go ahead. Call whoever you want. But first," he motioned to his deputy who had just arrived, "take photos of these fake violation notices. We're logging this into evidence." The deputy began snapping pictures of Karen's official documents, and the neighbors crowded closer, whispering, laughing, recording. One woman said loud enough for everyone to hear, "She posted the same junk on my garage last week." Another neighbor chimed in, "And mine. Claimed to write Boghouse was a code violation." Karen's head whipped around, panic in her eyes as more and more voices joined in, exposing her lies. No, they're making it up. I never." The sheriff cut her off. "Ma'am, I've got half a dozen witnesses right here, plus your so-called paperwork. You can keep talking, or you can listen while I explain the charges you're looking at." For the first time, Karen's voice dropped to a whisper. "Charges?" The sheriff pulled a small notepad from his pocket, speaking clearly so the whole street could hear. "Fraudulent notices, harassment, trespassing, and attempted extortion if you tried collecting dues." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones caught every word. My wife crossed her arms and finally allowed herself a smile. Karen's legs wobbled, her voice shaking now. This isn't fair. I was just trying to keep order." The sheriff snapped the notebook shut. "Order doesn't come from bullying, it comes from the law. And in this county, you answer to us, not some fake HOA paperwork." The neighbors erupted in cheers, clapping and chanting, their patience with Karen finally snapping into full-blown celebration. Karen's last shred of authority cracked like glass. She stomped her foot, screaming over the crowd. "You're all turning against me. I built this community. Without me, it'll fall apart." But the neighbors weren't buying it anymore. One man shouted back, "You didn't build anything. You just harassed everyone." Another woman waved her phone in the air. "I've got weeks of texts from you threatening fines. Sheriff, you want copies?" The sheriff gave a short nod. "Send them straight to my office." Then he turned back to Karen. "Looks like your neighbors have had enough. This isn't a leadership position anymore. It's a pattern of abuse." Karen shook her head violently, tears starting to well. No, I was just enforcing order. That's all I ever wanted." My wife stepped closer, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. "Order doesn't come from fear, Karen.
It comes from respect. And you've lost everyone's. The sheriff motioned to his deputy. Escort her to the car. She'll answer for this downtown. The deputy took her by the arm. She tried one last struggle, twisting and shouting, "This isn't over! I'll be back! You'll all regret this!" But her voice cracked, more broken than commanding now, drowned out by the sound of neighbors cheering as she was led away. The sheriff turned back to my wife, tipping his hat. "Ma'am, you're under no obligation to join any HOA. Your land is yours. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." My wife smiled softly, relief washing over her. "Thank you, Sheriff. We just wanted peace." He gave a nod. "And you'll have it now. Freedom to live on your land, that's the law. That's America." The crowd erupted in a pause, some even chanting my wife's name. Kids cheered, dogs barked, and for the first time in months, the street felt alive again, free of Karen's grip. The sun was sinking low, painting the lake in gold as Karen's screams faded into the distance, swallowed by the sheriff's cruiser. The crowd didn't disperse right away. Neighbors who'd barely spoken to each other in months lingered, swapping stories about the notices, the threats, the fear she had spread. For the first time, it felt like the block was united, not under her control, but against it. My wife stood on the porch, arms around our kids, a small smile breaking through her calm. A neighbor approached her, shaking her hand. "You stood up to her when the rest of us were too scared. You didn't just protect your land, you protected all of us." She nodded, steady but humble. "I wasn't going to let her take what we worked for. This is our home. Nobody can take that from us." The sheriff paused before getting into his cruiser. He turned back, his voice carrying across the quieting street. "Folks, let this be a reminder. Property rights are protected by law. You pay for your land, it's yours. HOA can't just walk in and rewrite the rules. And no bully, no matter how loud, can stand against the truth." The words hit hard. A cheer rose up, not rowdy, but proud. The kind of sound that comes from people remembering what freedom really means. I wrapped my arm around my wife, whispering, I fought overseas for years to defend this country. Never thought the real battle would be in our own neighborhood." She smiled, leaning into me. "And you still won." As the sheriff drove away, neighbors waved at us, kids ran back to playing, and the weight that had hung over our street for months finally lifted. The lake shimmered quietly behind us, ours again, untouched, unclaimed, and free.